Alrighty. Well, welcome back to another evening of learning over here. And getting set up already over here. I'm going to do some Hachaim on Moshiach. This is splitting. Learn a little Torah over here. Moshiach, welcome in. And we're going to get going over here and talking and learning about what is the Hachaim HaKadosh going to say about the sea splitting. So, all right, I'm jumping in over here. So, I'm in Parshas B'Shalach with the Hachaim over here. And we're going to start out an interesting Hachaim that has to do, of course, with Moshiach. So in the middle of Az Yasher, we have an interesting piece over here. It says Az Nefchalo Achulu, which says like this. Then the chieftains of Edom were confounded, trembling will grip the powers of Moab, and the dwellers of Canaan dissolve. It's part of the whole song of Az Yasher over here. So Hachaim is going to jump in, and he's going to talk about how a piece of Az Yasher has to do with Moshiach's coming. So let's jump in and learn about that. So again, we're in the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus in the Hachaim. We are in chapter 15 and verse 15 from the Hachaim. So it says, Az nechulu v'chulu. So Rabbi Arthur Scroll starts out with a little commentary over here, so I'm going to read it. So we are jumping on this commentary. It says, Edom and Moab had no reason to fear the coming of Jews, for the Jews were advancing against Canaan, not against them. In fact, the Jews would later be commanded not to attack them, as we find out later in Devarim. If so, Rashi wonders, why is it that they were frightened? Why were the Edom and Moab frightened during the sea splitting? What got them all shaken up? Furthermore, the Torah here records the reaction of the nations to the miracle in the preceding verse. Why then does the Torah spend another verse about the reaction of Edom and Moab with the word Az? Finally, why does the Torah use the word Az then, which implies in the future, hinting to something that's going to be happening in the future, and which implies that the nations will be frightened sometime in the future, not during the sea splitting. So something's taking place over here that is going to take place in the future. When they heard about the presumably we're presuming that they were frightened when they heard about the sea splitting. But the Hachaim is going to explain this is having to do, the sea splitting has to do with them being frightened about something in a distant time, in the time of the redemption. So let's get going right in the Hachaim in the book of Shemos, chapter 15, verse 15. Amru az leimer, and the verse says then, in order to tell us that it is not discussing the same time period it had been discussing until now. Something, someone wants to join over here. All right, into the, what's it called? All right, so, Amru az leimer, the verses says this in order to tell us that it is not discussing the same time period as that have been discussing until now. Someone here, I don't know, some people are popping in on the Zoom. I'm not sure if they're with us, if they're not with us. Anyhow, something's happening over here that it doesn't have to do with the sea splitting, is the point. Shehuz man shel achnasim la'eretz, which is when the people entered the land of Israel for the first time. Ela ad alzman bias l'seinu. Rather, the verse now refers to the time when our Redeemer Moshiach will come. So in Az Yasher, we have a reference to the coming of Moshiach, and the nation of Edom is trembling, and the nation of Moab is trembling. Why are they trembling during the sea splitting? So let's read about it. In the preceding two verses, the Jews sang to Hashem who would bring them into the land and who caused the nations who would be affected by the conquest to be frightened. In this verse, they sang to Hashem, who would bring them into the land. Moshiach comes and cause the nations who would be affected by the conquest to experience great fear. So we know already that there's already some things coming up that people are going to fear about. The Canaanites are going to get fearful. So this is something totally different over here. This pasuk, Oz and Avhalo, that the chieftains of Edom were confounded and trembling, and the Moav is going to get everyone's going to get their Edom and Moav are going to get all shaken up. So this has to do with Moshiach Satan, Moshiach times. Therefore, the verse says, then when Mashiach will arrive, the chieftains of Edom were confounded. And similarly, Bilam said in his prophecy concerning the future era of Mashiach, Edom shall in the future be a conquest. We'll defer to what the Hachaim says over there. The same is true for the next part of our verse, which discusses Moav. Moav had nothing to fear now, for the Jews were not advancing towards them. It has to do with a future time, but Mashiach is coming. However, then when Mashiach comes, aside from conquering Edom, the time will have also arrived for the Jews to gain possession of Moav and Ammon. And therefore the verse says, trembling will grip the powers of Moav when Mashiach comes. Mashiach Satan, our times. All right? Mashiach comes. Now, although the verse mentions only Moav, and the same is true for Ammon, trembling will grip them as well when Mashiach comes. Nevertheless, the verse does not mention Ammon separately because it is incorporated in the verse's mention of Moav and Ammon, where you know that they're like kind of brother nations. And so, what is this? What is this whole thing that we're talking about over here? For he too is Moav from the father, meaning he was conceived from the relations with his daughter. We know the whole story, famous in the Midrash, that Lot was rescued out of Sodom, and he thought that he was the last survivor in the world, and he got together with his daughters, and they had a party, and some children were born from that party. Bottom line is that from that union came the nations of Ammon and Moav, the whole story that happened, and bottom line is Ammon and Moav are one nation. So when the Torah mentions that Moav is going to be trembling, and you can also infer that Ammon is going to be trembling. Now, what is this whole thing that they're trembling about? What's all exciting? Well, what is the whole connection over here to Mashiach? We know that Edom and Ammon and Moav are going to be trembling. Who knows today what nations those are and what's their descendants? But we're talking about Mashiach over here from the splitting of the sea. The next part of the verse says that at the time, Canaan will be frightened. Now, Canaan was frightened for the Jews advancing to their land. Why is Canaan mentioned among the nations that will be frightened when Mashiach comes? So the Hachaim's adding over here that this whole thing has to do with Mashiach. Not just Edom's going to be frightened, Ammon and Moav are going to be frightened, and the Canaanites, who are, I don't know, I guess maybe the Arabs who live in Israel now, I don't know, says that they're going to be frightened. So let's see what he says over here about that. So he says, when the Jewish people entered Canaan, they did not conquer the entire land. However, when Mashiach's arrival, the Jewish people will gain possession of the entire Canaan. If we've got it all coming up for us. And this is what the verse means to say, that all the dwellers of Canaan dissolved. All refers to the entire country. That didn't happen during Yeshua's time. It will happen, though, during Mashiach's Satan. The Amr Yoshev Lamar, and the verse says, all the dwellers of Canaan, rather than all Canaan, in order to tell us that even the people of other nations dwelling in Canaan will become subject to conquest, meaning in Moshiach Satan, through living in Canaan. That is, that although Abraham was promised only 10 nations, when Moshiach comes, it will be permitted for the Jews to conquer any nations living in the land of in Eretz Israel, whether that includes the PLO or the FLO or the DLO, whatever nations out there. We are going to be in full control over Eretz Israel in a very short time period. God is going to grant us this, and this is prophecy right out of Oz Yasher, right out of what we're reading. What's the theme of tomorrow night as we go into Yom Tov? We're getting ready for the Yom Tov of Shvi Shel Pesach, and some people have a minhag to stay up all night and learn all night and get ready for the sea splitting. So I know that there is different people that have different minhagim. Some people go to a body of water and they jump over it. Some people go to a body of water and they say, I once went with somebody with Chassidish minhag that they go to a big lake on the night of Shvi Shel Pesach and they say the whole Az Yasha there right around midnight. Very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. A lot of different minhagim. Lubavitch, never seen such a thing, but there's a lot of cool minhagim out there about Shvi Shel Pesach. And getting back to this, the last part over here in the Hachaim, V'tam Amar Lashon Avar. The reason the verse says that the chieftains of Moav were confounded and all the dwellers of Canaan dissolved, in the past tense, instead of will be confounded and will be dissolved, even though it refers to the future times when Moshiach comes, Ki Dvar Hashem Ki'il Niskayim Haya, is that the word of Hashem, who promised to give the Jews the lands of these nations, will certainly be fulfilled. Therefore, it is the promise Therefore, it is as if the promise has already been fulfilled. And if these nations were already fearful, the Jews advanced towards them. So, Hachaim is saying something very, very cool over here. Straight out of Az Yasher. Tomorrow night, again, we've got this whole theme. And in the Az Yasher, we have this whole theme about Moav and Edom being fearful, trembling. And Canaan's going to be, the dwellers of Canaan are going to be dissolved. The dwellers of Canaan are going to be dissolved over here. So the Hachaim is pointing out something really, really fascinating over here. The Hachaim is pointing out that in the times of Moshiach, Canaan's going to be wiped away, Edom's going to be wiped away, Moav's going to be wiped away, meaning that doesn't necessarily mean in a war fashion. It could be in a peaceful manner that they're overtaken by Moshiach, but in whichever fashion, the Hachaim is saying over here, because it's written in the Torah, it's like a promise that the Eibishter already gave us, and it's already fulfilled. It's already a done deal. It's already a finished, done situation over here. Welcome in, Shimmy, joining us over here. Finished, done deal that we have this promise already. So again, I'm finding it fascinating. It almost gets me very excited. Not almost, it gets me very excited that we come across Orachaims that have to do things that from the Yom Tov that have to do so closely with Moshiach. Of course, the whole Pesach is very, very connected to Moshiach. But you check this out over here, this Hachaim. The Hachaim is right on target over here. That straight out of Az Yasher, we have this whole promise of the final time when Edom is going to be knocked to its feet. Edom's going to say, "Hey, listen, you had a promise from the beginning of time, from when you crossed the sea already." The Jews had a prophetic vision. When the Jews crossed the sea, every Jew was on the level equal to that of Yecheskel HaNavi, or greater. So we all perceived then, when we said the Az Yasher, that again, the pasuk over here, Az Nevchalu Afilu Edom Elu Moav. That again, the Hachaim, just to sum up over here, this piece, and then I'm going to move on to a different piece in the Hachaim. The Hachaim is saying something really, really fascinating, which is that Edom and Moav, they had no reason to fear the Jews were coming for them. It wasn't on their way. wasn't part of the derech, and wasn't part of the process. But reality is that they got all twisted up because there was a prophecy given to the Jews. There was a vision given to these nations in the end of times that Moshiach's going to take the reins. Moshiach's going to take the wheel, and we got control over the boat. So straight out of Hachaim from Az Yasher tells us it's right here. It's right in the promise. The Azn of Hadal Afilu Edom Elu Moav, straight in the Torah. Edom and Moav are frightened. They're frightened about what's going to happen in the end of days because Moshiach is going to take the wheel. Moshiach is going to be steering the boat. And how that happens, whether it's going to be through some massive war or through a miraculous transformation, as the Rebbe speaks about in different fashions, that the transformations can happen in a peaceful manner, that things can change in a good way. But either which way, point is that Edom and the Canaanites and Moav, they're all freaking out. So, cool or Hachaim. And that's that for that. I'm going to end the broadcast and start a second video on another Or Hachaim if you want to continue and join back in with me. Or you can continue with me on Zoom. And I will start over there that way.